Hello, and welcome back to Behavioral Echoes, where we deep dive into the patterns that shape our lives and how we can use that understanding to thrive. I'm Lisa Oborn, and as usual, I'm joined by my co host, Chris Eady.
Thanks, Lisa. Today's topic is one that's increasingly urgent in our current climate: mental health awareness and burnout prevention. With the recent uptick in layoffs, job insecurity, and the ongoing blurring of work life boundaries, political tensions, global rifts, more people are feeling the weight of stress, anxiety, and even depression.
Absolutely. We see so many discussions around mental health and stress and burnout, and it's never been more critical. People are dealing with unprecedented levels of discomfort and uncertainty, and it is taking a huge toll on their well being.
I do think there's an opportunity in the challenge, however. Even as a psychologist, and I'm sure you as a coach, I often seek support through coaching and mentoring myself. There's no weakness in doing that. I've often been told or have seen that it's a sign of strength when even us as professionals in the personal change and self development space, we get to equip people with the tools to develop resilience, manage stress, and maintain well being, but it also applies to us. We take advantage of supporting ourselves by doing exactly what we will be sharing today. We're here to discuss approaches that help change negative thoughts, that build a positive mindset, and helps you stay in the moment where you can access your best emotions and your best responses.
And you're right, Chris. Everyone needs a coach, and especially coaches, because it's so hard to see what you're missing, especially when you look at yourself. And let's start by addressing the current climate that we're seeing in the world. With people facing layoffs, job insecurity, and those lines between work and personal life are just so blurred. Now we have the return to office, the debate over what hybrid means, and so much more. There's the stress that if you're laid off, what do I do if I'm left? How do I get that work done and there's less people? How does this impact my mental health? There is so much just happening right now.
I think the impact's really significant, and people face job insecurity and those blurred boundaries. I think it creates a sense of uncertainty and definitely a lack of control because people feel like they're at the mercy of their job almost. And that leads to chronic stress, getting up every day. And if there's one thread of dread, it just seems to envelope, attract more of those kinds of thoughts and feelings. And if they're left unmanaged, what they lead to is burnout. When you start with a single thread, you almost build that wick. And once it lights, it can even lead to depression. It's a constant pressure to perform. It's coupled with the fear of job loss. I think sometimes for a lot of us, it's hard to switch off and it's exhausting and it's overwhelming.
And I really like that you said that control because in many cases you see that with people because areas where they can't control a situation, it tends to have a bigger impact and causes them to just spiral because they feel there's nothing they can do about it. There's that fear. What if I lose my job? What if I'm not doing enough? Am I on that algorithm being considered for layoffs? What happens if they keep me? And what happens? This becomes everything that constantly goes on in your head. It never shuts down. You're not able to rest. You're not able to sleep. You don't have good relationships. It's just constantly a never ending conversation in your head.
And the reality is, yes, these kinds of situations really do impact people, in real ways, financially, socially, et cetera. This is also a place where, some people don't have those kinds of concerns, but if they have to go through this, it still creates the same kind of stressors. There are a lot of people who work because they enjoy working. They come from very wealthy families, and if they didn't want to, they probably don't have to. And they are just as enjoyable as those of us who go to work because we have to. And the interesting thing is, those people who are there for just the enjoyment and the thrill of the work, they have other options. They go through the same stressors, Lisa. This is where the profession of support, coaching, psychology, whatever you want to go after to help nurture the better side, the better thoughts comes into play. Our specific work really helps people recognize and change the negative patterns and the thoughts that go through their head instead of being stuck in that cycle of fear or worry. And we help them develop empowering beliefs. For example, instead of thinking I might lose my job, we can reframe that to another thought that says I'm capable. I will find opportunities no matter what happens.
And I really like that, Chris. And that whole mindset shift is so powerful. It gets us away from that mindset of fear and being stuck in the what if and allows us to take back what is ours and feel empowered. It's how to attract the thoughts and be the kind of person we want to be. If we want to be balanced, we tend to think about everything that's going on in life and consider what we do for relaxation or hobbies. And then we think about work and we think about family and relationships. But once you get into that stress, all of our thoughts completely go to what is causing us stress at that moment. And they just multiply and they grow. And all of a sudden, that story is no longer what it started. It has just morphed into something huge. And it becomes very difficult to break that cycle without tools and techniques to help you get out of it.
I like the idea of the tools and techniques. I want to harp on something that you just said for a moment because I think it's really important for our listeners. And it's something that, in a lot of ways, what distinguishes a really good coach and sometimes just even a coach from people who don't have those support systems or don't give those services is that in a lot of cases, they understand their story, they know their story, and they've left their story behind and they've created a new one. That's what we do is we help people stay in the present moment and help them move past their stories because in those stories you don't get to access your emotions and your best responses. Those stories are typically about things that have already happened, and as you said, the great thing about the past is it's done, so you can't access if you haven't practiced how to pull those resources out of those moments. So things like focusing on gratitude and what's going on, what's going well right now, constantly recalling a great experience and smiling while you're thinking about it, to reinforcing your mind that you are happy and that you can be happy. This helps us override or control over time how those thoughts impact us. And the more we do it, the less they impact us. If we have the tools that we can practice, we can reduce the grip of anxiety, we can build a foundation of positive emotion, and both of those are going to help us respond better to challenges. The opposite is true as well.
And I agree completely in exactly what you said. Whatever story you feed is what we become, whether it's positive or negative. And that story, if you really listen to it, that can be years in the past and usually is. It's not something that just occurred 5 seconds ago. It's usually way back. There's different ways we can really address these and apply the tools in our daily lives. So, for all of you listening, and you're feeling that pressure, I know you want to ask, what can we do today? And I'll share a bit from my side. I was impacted by layoffs and I was so relieved because in other cases I'd been impacted and the history was always, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with this extra workload? And how am I going to address this? And I usually reacted to that as to how much more stress I was going to have. But we're all eventually impacted by layoffs, and we're the ones that actually get laid off. And like I said, I was so relieved. And I didn't care about what did I do, not do. It didn't bother me because I knew it had nothing to do with me. It was an algorithm. And it's a million factors that are put into that algorithm. It can be anything from location to the new strategy, and it's irrelevant. But I instead took it to peace and joy. And I looked at it very excited, going, oh my goodness, this is the first time I have had the summer off. For me, this was thrilling. It was exciting, and it caused a completely different reaction in my brain. All I could think of was, I get to enjoy a summer for me doing what I love. What did that do? Different reaction, different perspective. I didn't sit there panicking. I didn't sit there in anxiety or fear. I sat there constantly going, what can I do to enjoy my summer and just feel good about being me, doing things that I love? What did that do? That put this whole event under my control.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And for our listeners, I think it's important when you listen to Lisa share, there's a story there of anything other than expressing the joy and the peace and the happiness from the perspective that she saw what happened to her from. What you said is really critically important. I think in order to get to that point where we can initiate a defense against stress or anxiety, first, we've got to acknowledge how we feel. And I think it's okay to have that moment of stress because it's natural. But that's also where things get a little dicey because if we don't have the tools and the mechanisms to, one, regulate it and mitigate it, control it, however we want to perceive that to be, We're not always going to be stoic and unemotional when certain things are shared with us. Some things are shocking. And it's what we do with that information shortly after we get it. For instance, if you desperately need to get to the other side of the street and you didn't know how, and I show you how to get to the other side of the street, and we repeat it a couple of times, and you can do that with ease and comfort, you'll be able to do that or apply that strategy at least when you need to cross the road again in the future. You now have a strategy or a tactic to employ when you face that situation or any situation like it. And the same is true here when it applies to work and the stress and layoffs, the burnout, etc.
And I agree completely with you, Chris, and you sharing that about the other side of the road. I'm thinking about, many times we see on the street, or we did years ago, you would see Boy Scouts and Girl Guides helping people across the road. It's that simple. We all are here to help each other. And instead of getting hung up in the onslaught of thought and it just becomes so overwhelming, stay present. Because if you stay present in this exact moment, what Chris and I just talked about a minute ago, if you're thinking about that, you're not present. You're thinking about what we just shared with you. Being present is right now, what's happening right now to me. We've talked about gratitude. If I'm just sitting here thinking right now in the present moment, I am so grateful that I'm able to breathe, that I'm able to share with you. It's a beautiful thing. I'm not thinking about anything else. If anybody knows me, I wake up every day grateful and thankful that I woke up. It's the most beautiful thing because I have another opportunity to live life. And I also give gratitude before I go to bed as to what I was thankful for that happened in that day. It doesn't matter if it's good, it doesn't matter if it was bad, because every single experience I have, why I experienced it, I know how to react, and it's okay. I've learned something new. These are just such valuable insights and allows you to be really present, even in that moment when somebody cuts you off. Breathe, be grateful for that moment, no matter what it was, and you can reduce the stress, you can recenter yourself, and it's a wonderful thing. And Chris, can you sort of explain as we're wrapping up today, what should we really consider as key takeaways? Because we've shared so much.
I think the key takeaway is that while stress and burnout's real pressing concerns, we do have the tools as human beings to manage them. One, by leveraging support. Two, by utilizing a lot of the, I don't want to call them insider secrets or traits of things that we would normally do with our customers and clients as coaches. But there's other techniques as well. There's things that in instances where people have had great moments and there are resources there. And that's what we help them actually pull out, because if they've done it once, they can do it again. I think it's important for people to remember you're not alone in this. With the right mindset, the right set of strategies, the right support, you can navigate these challenges. You can actually come out a whole lot stronger on the other side.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing that. And I want to also take the opportunity to thank, and I'm grateful for all of our listeners for tuning into the episodes of Behavioral Echoes. If you found this discussion helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who you feel might benefit from the messages.
Until next time, stay resilient and take care of your mental health.
Bye.
Bye.